T. Towson, getting through my jet lag, and at least I didn't make the trip out to the Combine in Indianapolis this week, but we're watching the Underwear Olympics as well as the Orioles in spring training. I got the Wizards, the Terps, the Caps, but certainly the Orioles spring training story has percolated now as they were on television on Monday. I actually saw with my own eyes playing the Yankees. Seth Gruen covers all things baseball for Bleacher Report. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Seth Gruen. That's Gruen. He is out of the hometown of the world champion Chicago Cubs. That's still weird, right, Seth, to say world champion Chicago Cubs. I mean, in the same year, Cleveland Cavaliers and Chicago Cubs. I got to get used to that, right?
Yeah, I don't even believe it. I was at Game 7, and it's still so surreal because you're just so used to them chasing it. It's like, wow. The target's on the Cubs' backs now because they're obviously the favorite this year too.
How was that vibe, the Game 7 vibe? Like I saw all of the the video stuff and the crowds out onto the streets, and just give me a little rundown of your night there because I think I remember lots of nights with Super Bowls. Good guys winning, bad guys winning, the Ravens winning. At least we've never lost one. But there was a lot of tension going around there that week, as I remember it.
Well, yeah, I think when you talk about the ebb and flow of that game, it really was unlike any other in recent memory. And we're on a pretty good run of really quality championships when you talk about last year's NCAA championship and the Super Bowl and the NCAA football championship. And look, that Game 7 ranks right up there with them. The rain delay, Aroldis Chapman coming in and blowing the save. That Jason Hayward speech, which we later found out about. Game 7, going to 10 innings. I mean, it was just, my eyes were glued to the field, and I remember almost every pitch and every at-bat very, very vividly, and we're still talking about it today.
Well, we remember every pitch and every at-bat in Toronto for the Orioles, and Buck Showalter's trying to wash October, away from our collective memories. I think the Falcons are going to have the same situation, right? And to your point, the Indians would have the same. When you lose and when you get eliminated, it eats at you, and this is the time of the year from the baseball perspective where, the grass is green, the air is fresh, the possibility is there. From the Orioles' perspective, the first couple of weeks of spring training have been a disaster. From Hardy's back to Tillman to Britt not being able to get on the field, although that feels like it's fixed at this point. But this is also the time where things start to go wrong or they start to go right, and you start to try to find some young guys emerging that your off season and your minor league belief is placed in. We're going to see some new faces and some new lineups next month once we get north.
Yeah, and Michael Bourne just broke his finger, too.
Correct.
So, and I know that he's not a guy that maybe they necessarily were relying upon, but, someone you sort of root for, that if he's making your roster, that's a good thing, and that's because he can really help you at the major league level, and he's still got something left in that 34-year-old, I think, body of his. But I think you sort of hit on it in somewhat of a roundabout way, in that the one thing you want to hope for coming out of spring training is health. I don't really pay much attention to records or even necessarily a player's numbers, but, you look at the at-bats, see if they're quality. I mean, there's a reason you have a 6-week-long preseason. It's longer than any preseason in sports, and that's because it takes hitters a while to get their rhythm. It takes pitchers a while to stretch out, and with that comes some bumps along the road. But the injuries are stuff that one would think you can avoid or you hope you can avoid, and any team that limps into that first month of the regular season certainly is behind before the games even start.
Well, and getting the health thing together, it starts with the pitching, right? And this World Baseball Classic, dude, someone's going to get hurt, right? I just have to hope it's not Jonathan Scope. You have to hope it's not your starting pitcher. But this is a very, very messy thing that Major League Baseball has endeavored to get involved in to make a few bucks and to spread a little Johnny Appleseed around the world for the great game of baseball where, it's not even really baseball, right? Because, everybody's on pitch counts. Everybody thinks they're trying to win until such point the pitch count's blown or until such point where somebody gets injured. Somebody's going to get injured. I can predict that.
Yeah, low risk, high reward there. I'm not really in favor of the World Baseball Classic. I know that it has some feel-good elements and feel-good stories to it with some guys coming out of retirement to play in it and whatnot. But the reality is, we know how fragile pitchers can be, and they're one pitch away from maybe sustaining a career-altering injury, and you'd hate to see that happen in the World Baseball Classic. And as soon as the star does get hurt, seriously hurt, this thing's going to have to be rethought. I think if baseball wants to spread the sport around the world, it should focus itself more towards some traditional tournaments like the Olympics, which obviously it can't right now. But, I think the NHL does an outstanding job of supporting some of these international tournaments and promoting international play. And look, that's a physical sport, but the Olympics means something. This World Baseball Classic is almost an artificially manufactured international tournament to, try to, as you said, spread the popularity of the sport around the world. But the reality is it's meaningless. It's almost as meaningless as an all-star game. So I think
I was going to say it's a 2-week all-star game to me. I mean,
yeah, and look, I think the Major League Baseball is kind of spinning its wheels with this thing. I don't really see a lot of upside to it, and as you alluded to, just a whole lot of risk.
And then we have situations where we're trying to get some pitchers healthy, get them innings in, get them ready to go 5-6 innings on opening day. And we're already hearing, in various places, guys aren't going to be ready. Tillman, first day out of spring training, Tillman's not available. Boy, that puts a little damper on things when you're not really sure about Bundy and Gausman to begin with around here.
Yeah, you just wonder why things like that weren't addressed earlier, or how that can come up the first day of spring training, or whether that was just a setback from something we don't know. There's lots of iterations and lots of reasons that pitchers get hurt and pitchers aren't ready. Dylan Bundy's a guy who I think they have got a lot of hope tied up in. I know that he changed his mechanics this year, and it helped him stay healthier than he was previously. He's still probably a guy you would think has that ace potential, but it's like you said, there's just a lot of unknowns with the starting pitching staff. And look, it's the same conversation we had last year, and the Orioles still wound up in the playoffs. So there's a lot of capable people on that team. I think it's a really capable offense, and a team that obviously, as we've said time and again, can win with offense and bullpen pitching.
Cubs are the best team still, right?
Yeah, but I think the National League is a lot tougher this year. I think when you look, for the Cubs getting over that hump, getting over that 108-year drought, was obviously their biggest hurdle. But when you talk about the competition on the field, I actually think this year it's going to be a little bit tougher for them to win the World Series than it will be last year. I think when you look at all the National League teams rebuilding, it's a foregone conclusion that the Cubs and probably most of the other teams that were in the playoffs last year will again return. So all eyes are pointed towards October. But when we get there, I think the San Francisco Giants are better. Look, they went out and signed one of the best closers in baseball. That was the biggest need for any playoff team after the 2016 season. You consider the fact they blew two saves in that NLDS. One of those games they ended up winning, but you think about the possibility if they had a closer in that series, might they have beaten the Cubs? It's entirely possible. So I think that makes the Giants a lot better, especially after they blew more saves than anyone in 2016. I got to believe Bryce Harper is going to be better than he was last year. Was dealing with that shoulder injury. I think that's an aberration. He's still a perennial MVP candidate. And look, I think that a lot of people criticize that Adam Eaton trade, but you talk about some of the stuff that Mike Rizzo's been able to do and some of the decisions he's made. They've been near perfect. So, maybe they were down on Lucas Giolito, and maybe that Adam Eaton trade pays dividends for them. He's a great on-base guy and a great table setter for a team that, has some big bats in the middle of its lineup. So the Nationals and Giants, I definitely look at as really viable threats to the Cubs this year.
Everyone around here is adding up the math on the Red Sox offseason versus the Orioles and certainly the Blue Jays. I still think the Yankees are a hell of a factor here, given the youth and given what they did at the trading deadline last year, and they still have the money in the middle of the year to go out and buy your problem or your cast off, and certainly now have young talent that they could deal the other direction if they wanted to acquire at the trading deadline. I fear the Yankees this year. I feel like they've been down a little bit, and I certainly know what the Red Sox have done. This Red Sox-Yankees thing and the balance of power in the American League East, to me, that's one of the things that's opened up a chance for the Orioles and the Blue Jays to be involved in this, is that the Yankees and the Red Sox have been shakier boats the last 5 years with contract situations, obviously some bad signings. I mean, hell, the Red Sox had that one-off season with the Panda that sort of obliterated them in the Bobby Valentine era there and all that. I think the Yankees are poised to make a comeback here this year.
Yeah, I agree. I would not be at all surprised if they won the World Series or if they made the World Series or made a deep run into October. I mean, this is a super, super talented team. You know, I think Brian Cashman showed us this past offseason that, look, he can do more than sign checks. He had an incredible week leading up to the trade deadline in July, and is certainly a guy who just really repositioned that organization and really solidified its future. I think the upshot is what you hit on in the latter part of your commentary there, in that they've got a tremendous group of specifically position players in their farm system who they could deal at the deadline and address needs. So don't be surprised if they're one of the big contenders for a top starting pitcher at the deadline, or, you know, they're able to add a big bat, off a team that's looking to dump some salary. So, I expect the Yankees to be a major, major factor. And just to speak to that AL East as a whole, that's going to be really, really entertaining baseball this year. That division, you know, all those games, I think it's really hard to make an argument that games in April, May, or even June matter a whole lot, because these races always come down to the final couple of weeks of the season. But each of those division games is going to mean something, and each of those teams knows how competitive that division is going to be, and it's just going to make for outstanding theater.
Well, can you imagine if Sandoval could actually make a comeback? I mean, Ramirez did last year, and now they add Sale and Porcello and Price. You know, Price got paid a lot of money to be the guy. It feels like all the pressure now goes to Sale in Boston. But that's a nice problem to have. I mean, they have Sale, Porcello, and Price. The Orioles have Tillman, maybe Bundy, probably, and Gausman, we hope, right?
Yeah. And look, here's what adding a Chris Sale does. I think, you know, a lot of people, one of sort of the softball questions people ask an incumbent pitcher when you bring in, you know, a guy the caliber of Chris Sale is, what kind of impact do you think this guy's going to have on the staff? What can you learn from him? You know, to some degree, that's a little bit of BS, because these guys go out and pitch every fifth day, and they never see the field together. They never play together. So they're never really the beneficiary on that day of one player's outstanding performance. However, what adding a guy like Sale does is it reduces the pressure on your bullpen that day. You expect Chris Sale to go out and pitch 7 innings every time he takes the hill. And that keeps your bullpen fresher for guys later in the rotation. So, in essence, it actually takes pressure off of David Price, where maybe he can throw his best stuff earlier in a game than he ordinarily would, because last year he was that guy. He was that ace. He was the guy counted upon to go out and pitch 7 innings. But, you know, if he's only asked to pitch 6, he can use his better stuff earlier in the game, and he can manage his arm differently. So in that regard, adding Chris Sale obviously adds depth to the rotation, and as you said, takes a little bit of pressure off Porcello and Price.
It is amazing. You're out there in Chicago, Seth Gruen, and Chris Sale's in the clubhouse chopping up uniforms with really one of the most infamous acts of insubordination I've ever heard of in sports. You know, I think it's one thing to take the piss with the ownership or the management or your coaches or a teammate or, Papelbon choking guys in the locker. I mean, I've seen all of that stuff, but, premeditating, bringing in scissors and cutting up uniforms. And when he's doing it, you know what he's thinking? Well, what are they going to do to me? Let me go to Boston and pitch next year? The act of insubordination, you wonder, well, where's the punishment going to be? And then you find out there really is no punishment if you're good at what you do.
Yeah, well, look, that's the case in all sports. We've seen that time and again. I think the reality of that is that when you have something that's premeditated like that, and you said he thought to bring scissors into the clubhouse and cut up the jerseys, it's the result of lots of issues just coming to a head, and that was the case with Chris Sale. I mean, look, we and I'm not sitting here defending him, but clearly he had some issues with the front office in particular, and that reared its head in spring training last year when he and Kenny Williams basically had a verbal altercation. I think that it wasn't addressed soon enough and that's why it may have manifested itself and probably, as you very eloquently categorized it, one of the most bizarre, one of the most infamous examples of insubordination I've ever heard of in sports.
Well, and again, he didn't have to pay the price, and they let him go. Meanwhile, here in Baltimore, this whole season, we're going to be talking about this. Manny Machado, right? I mean, the Orioles finally get a player. They finally get that next Hall of Fame track guy. And after giving, Chris Davis a bunch of money, after giving Trumbo some money, spreading it around, they let Matt Wieters walk out the side door. They let Markakis go. This Manny Machado thing here locally for the Angelos family and for what the Orioles represent, this is going to be a remarkable couple of years now as to what they're going to do with him, specifically if they fall out of the race somehow, some way, which I don't think they will. I think they'll stay in the race, but if they were to fall behind, what then happens to Manny Machado in value come July?
You mean, what could he potentially command in
Well, the word's $400 million, right? I mean,
league?
the question is whether he's going to be an Oriole in 2019.
Right. Well, I think it's very, very clear that both he and Bryce Harper are going to get record deals, assuming that Bryce Harper rebounds this season, which, as I said earlier, I expect to happen. What could he command in prospects? Probably an unprecedented number, something much, much better than the White Sox got for Chris Sale, and an unbelievable package. I think there's very few teams that would be capable of trading for him. The Yankees would be one. Look, I know that there's a lot of uneasiness about it in Baltimore. I know that Baltimore isn't necessarily known for being a big spender, and their model has been to wait to the 11th hour to sign players.
It's just the way they run the law firm, by the way.
Seth. Right. But I think if I'm the Orioles, I hang on to him as long as I can and try to win a World Series with him on my roster. I think that's probably the best move because the reality is it's like Mike Trout. You're just never going to get full value for him in a trade because he's a transcendent talent.
He is Seth Gruen. You can follow his transcendent talent out on Twitter at Seth Gruen. That's Gruen. And, of course, out at Bleacher Report doing a whole bunch of sports radio and other good stuff, even some basketball out there in the Chicagoland area. Always great catching up with you, Seth. Hope you're enjoying it's not spring in Chicago yet, right? I mean, you're still 10 weeks away from that sort of thing out there, right?
No, we don't really have spring here in Chicago. It goes basically from winter to summer. And, brutally cold to unbelievably humid. But love this city.
Hey, man, I was out there for Pearl Jam back in August, and life was a big beach there for a couple of days. It was pretty good. And I hear Eddie Vedder's happy these days.
Yeah, that's the word. He's partying it up at Wrigley Field.
How many times have you heard that song since Game 7? 1 million?
More than I can count. More than I can count, man.
I'm glad I'm not in Chicago. I don't have to listen to it. Hey, man, take care of yourself. Be well. We'll catch up again soon.
All right, great talking.
Happy spring training to Seth Gruen. I'm going to get to some cacti games 3 weeks from now. I'm going to be out for the NFL owners meetings in Phoenix. I'm trying to figure out which stadium I'm going to check out this time. I try to find different stadia every time I go out there. Problem is, I've done all like the downtown ones now. Now you got to go out to the hinterlands and go off to your own Westminster or your own Elkton to find some of these games and some of these complexes. But love spring training baseball. Nothing more fun than going to spring training out in Arizona. I've got many friends, including my pal Jay Pivick, was down in Sarasota earlier this weekend. Put some pictures up of the GD Yankees, which was cool. Didn't mind that at all. So, spring training action, and I'm watching the Caps, watching the Terps, watching the Wizards, keeping an eye on the Underwear Olympics out at the Combine in Indianapolis. We're doing it all around here. You can find anything you miss in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. Just download the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear. Morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. That happens every morning. It's all powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where you can go and get in the best shape. They got the Lunk Alarm there. Planet Fitness around the corner. Go take care of them. Last but never least, breaking news happens first on our WNST text service. Get it right here on your phone. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford Security Boulevard. Dennis Colatzos will be here on Thursday, driving you home, getting you ready for a weekend of sports, as well as the Combine that he loves so much. So make sure you tune into the SSV on Thursday. Nasty at WNST.net finds me anytime, anywhere. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and streaming live on our Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We got head coach Barry Trotz joining us on March 20th here in Baltimore. We're going to have a little Rock the Red celebration for the Caps in advance of their Stanley Cup run, which I'm thinking got a little better on Monday night with the wheelings and dealings of Brian McClellan. And last but never least, the Ravens road trips are on sale to London, and we're getting Green Bay and Nashville and Oakland ready for when the schedule comes out in a couple of weeks. That probably happens second week of April. So drafts up in Philadelphia this year. Lots of good stuff. It's good to be back. Good to be back in the cockpit talking some baseball, some football, some basketball, some hockey. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.